everybody. Sarah with you today for a Cherry on Top's Technique Tuesday. For the month of April, we are working on embossing. So I thought I would teach you a couple of fun techniques that are easy and add a pop and a gorgeousness to your layouts. So what do we need? You need a surface that is, I'm using a Tim Holtz glass media mat. So we need a nice clean surface that can take some heat because we're going to be using some heat. We also need some coffee filters. Coffee filters are like my go-to when I'm embossing anything because they will pick up. They can hold, they're like little cups. They're completely disposable. And when you're all finished, you can spray a little bit of vinegar or water on your media mat, wipe it up, and it will take up all those little embossing powdery blah, blah, blahs. All right, next up, we need embossing ink. Your favorite embossing ink. I use Brutus Monroe embossing ink, but you can use any embossing ink. Doesn't matter. Embossing ink is embossing ink is embossing ink. It's just sticky ink. Embossing powder. Any embossing powder will work. A Cherry on Top has multiple colors and brands. You want something that's going to be fine. So when you buy your embossing powder, do fine. And I always go for metallics. So golds, silvers, coppers. For this particular technique we are going to do today, that's what you want. So this is Golden Peach embossing powder from Ultinu. You are going to need a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. And I have my photo here. My photo is printed on cardstock. This is very important because we're going to emboss on our photo and we don't want photo paper. No glossy photo paper. Just nice cardstock, whatever cardstock works in your printer, and print your photo onto just nice cardstock. Okay, so those are the supplies. You'll notice what we're missing here. Stamps. I love stamps. I love embossing stamps. But for today, I'm going to teach you some ways to add fun embossing to your scrapbook layouts using a direct to paper method, which is awesome. Okay, let's speed this up and get creating. Okay, step number 1, turn on your heat tool. Depending on how long it takes your heat tool to heat up, you might want to go ahead and turn it on beforehand. I turned mine on, but I have a Wagner heat tool, which is, it gets fast. It gets hot, very, very quickly. So just know, if you know what your heat tool does, that'll help you to know when you need to turn it on. So I've just taken that embossing powder and I have rubbed the edge of the ink pad right over my paper. So I didn't worry about any kind of powder tool or anything because we're going for messy. We're going for direct to paper. I coated that edge with some embossing powder, and now I'm going to go ahead and apply the heat. So I would say when you're doing a full 12 by 12 sheet that you want to do one edge at a time. Don't try to coat the whole 12 by 12 sheet of paper with embossing powder and then hit it with a heat tool. At some point, you're going to disrupt or dislodge some of that powder and it'll just be problematic. So now I'm taking the next side, and you can see here, direct to paper works great. It's just use your ink pad exactly the way you use an ink blending tool when you want to ink the edges of your paper. But this time you're inking the edges of your paper with an embossing ink, and then you're going to add this gorgeous color to the edges, and it turns out so pretty. I love it. Again, do one edge at a time and then hit it with the heat tool. You have control over how thick these edges are going to be. If you want a really pronounced thick edge, you can do it. If you just want something that is very, very, very subtle, you can do that too. I'm going to go for somewhere in the middle. And unfortunately, you know what, guys? Embossing powder is messy. There's no getting around it. The mess will happen. That being said, this isn't a wet mess, it's a dry mess, which means it will clean up super easily. I have a little shark, we call it the baby shark. It's kind of like a 1980s dustbuster, and it sucks all the dry powder up without a problem. Any of the little grit that you get. You see me there kind of being like, see, you're going to make a mess. You're going to spill it. There's no way around it. For a little extra pop of faded color, I'm going to go ahead and take Distress Oxide in Saltwater Taffy. I'm going to put a good bit on this. My idea is to have the edges be more saturated in color and then kind of have my the ink kind of fade into the middle of my layout, because I know that I'm going to do my photo and clusters right in the middle of my page. So again, this is up to you. If you want it to be really saturated, you can do a lot of ink. If you want it to be really light, you can do a little bit of ink. Your paper is going to warp a little bit just from the heat. And so once I have finished this background completely and I have the inking done, go ahead and put it under a heavy book for a couple of hours. Go do some laundry, cook dinner, go to bed, and then it will flatten out very quickly and easily. Now let's get to work on our photo. Okay, so remember that we printed our photo on cardstock, not on photo paper. That's so super important, and I can't stress it enough. Because our photo is on cardstock, we can tear it, and that's what I did. So I just took the top and bottom of my photo and tore a bit off of it. I also printed my photo at 5x7, which allows me again to have that little bit more white space and a little bit more area to be able to go ahead and just tear that paper just like you would tear anything in scrapbooking. This is not anything precious at this point. It's just a photo on cardstock. And because it's on cardstock, that means that we can 100% heat emboss it. So I'm embossing those torn edges, and I'm embossing a little bit across the edge. Now this is something where you want to be careful with your embossing ink just a little bit, and just make sure that you are just make sure that you're only grabbing the edges, and it can splatter a little bit. I know I got a little bit of teeny tiny little grains kind of onto my photo, but it's okay because again, this is just a picture printed on cardstock. So I'm going to hit that with the heat tool and check out the cool mat we have on our photo now. And here's what our embossed elements look like on a finished layout. So I'm going to put this up here so you can really see. So we have that gorgeous border with the inked, and then we have our beautiful photo, and I've gone ahead and paired my photo and my border with just some beautiful cascading embellishments around my photo. So this is all 49th and Market's Tranquil Moments collection. Super simple. Just matted the photo onto 2 separate papers and then played with embellishments till I had these beautiful clusters on either side of my photo. I hope you will give this beautiful technique a try. It's something a little special and it looks lovely on a finished scrapbook page. See you again soon. Bye.